Welcome to Mo's Market Pulse. I'm your host, Sarah Mogram, founder of Mo Digital Solutions, where we help businesses hit their revenue goals and thrive. On this podcast, we talk with industry leaders to gain real insights. And today we're joined by a marketing leader building at the intersection of AI, digital experience, and partner led growth. Nicole Rogers, co founder and CMO at AI12Z. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Nicole, to get us started, can you just give us kind of that big picture view of the company? What does the company do? Who is it built for? And what problem are you solving that traditional website experiences still aren't solving well?
Sure. Great question. So, in terms of what we're doing at AI1 to Z, we've built out an AI search and digital assistant platform. And essentially, what's taking place is we land on websites every day. We go to a website and we're either trying to, one, find information, or two, we're trying to complete some sort of task or take some action. Sometimes when we land on websites, it's both of those. And with AI1 to Z, we really wanted to solve that problem in which you're trying to find that item on, or, whether it's information or an actual item on a website. And chatbots have tried to fill that need in the past, but they have often failed. I'm sure the listeners, as well as you and myself, we've all gone to a website, we've tried out a chatbot, and it's been a frustrating experience. And then with search, we type in search within websites themselves, and it comes back with a long list of links, sometimes hundreds, sometimes zero, zero results. And that's the need that we want to fulfill at AI1 to Z is really helping people move forward in their customer journey so that they can convert. So it brings for businesses an increase in conversion rate, increase in their business outcomes. And then one more thing to add on to that, we are actually soon launching a GEO, some people call it GEO, or AEO solution. And so a lot of people these days are talking about how do you get found within ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude. And so we're going to help organizations with a solution in place for that as well.
That's great. So, I know when we talked earlier, I was just sharing with you how great I thought your product was because it's something that I was thinking I needed just the other day while I was on a website. So I love that you guys have that. And for this new endeavor that you guys are launching, so will that be something just run in parallel with or as a separate service that people can engage with you on?
Yeah, it'll actually be a part of the package. So it's a whole continuous journey in terms of how do you first get found within these generative AI platforms. And then from that, how do you convert once people land on your website? So we wanted to make it a full package from the start. For people are moving away from just searching within Google or even within Google. They are searching in Google, but it's called zero click search now with the AI overviews. So how do you get recommended within in those platforms? And that is going to be the first start of the solution. But again, it's in the same package.
Great. So I want to touch on the founder story here because your background spans, major technology companies and now a much earlier stage build. Can
Mhm.
you walk us through that transition a bit? What made this the right moment to move from those larger companies into building something from the ground up?
Yeah. So two of my co-founders, I actually worked with them at a company called Ectron. That's now known as Optimizely. And it was within the web content management space or CMS or WCM, now called DXP, Digital Experience Platform. So we all worked together back during those Ectron days. And then I moved on to companies like Box as well as Google, WeWork and Matterport, and much bigger in size for sure. Definitely lived the Silicon Valley life. So lived in the San Francisco Bay Area and was with two of those companies that went public, which was an interesting journey in itself. And those companies were more later stage in terms of still pre-IPO, Series D and whatnot in terms of funding and bigger in size, about 200, 300 people. And it was really great to be a part of a company where you saw it launch more later down the line, but there was product market fit and all of that. So fast forward into a couple of years ago when we were starting AI One to Z, my two co-founders and I were chatting about, okay, this is almost like the next Google. When everybody was talking about Google, now we have AI. And you've seen AI come about these past few years, and it's huge. We've seen print give way to radio, which gives given way to TV, and then there's social and mobile. And we're at this other point in the technology sphere in which AI is game changing, and it's really impacting our daily lives, to be honest. And so I wanted to be a part of that movement. And so why not build out this company with these two co-founders who I've worked with before, and they have records of success. And so taking my learnings from what I learned during my Box days and Google days and WeWork days, and it's very different in nature for sure. Like with startup, you are building everything from scratch. You are setting the processes in place, but it is really exciting to be a part of this where you're essentially building a rocket ship. And I think it's timely, we're seeing everything going on with Artemis, and it's cool to see it launch, and then we're gaining customers, and I'm just excited to see where it's going to go in the future as well.
So that kind of leads to my next question. I'm hoping you can just expand a little bit on what you already touched on. But as the company has evolved, over the last couple of years, N how has that market changed around you in terms of the buyers? So I'm curious what felt early at the beginning, that now feels much more timely or much more understood by buyers, and what have you seen there over these, from the beginning when you guys started to now?
Yeah, great question. I would say from the beginning, a lot of people were thinking, okay, I'm getting told by our executive team that we need to implement AI. Not sure how to do that, where to start. And so we were getting a lot of those messages from partners as well as direct customers. Like, we need to go live with AI, but AI is so broad in nature when you talk about that topic. And so now we're at a point where people are actually implementing AI and AI tools in place. How do you speed up efficiency within the workplace? For our tool, it's going live on a website, which will make it accessible to all of the customers using it to help them better find that information and get their answers to the questions that they're asking specific to that brand. So you're seeing this shift in terms of, oh, I think I want to use AI to now we're ready to implement. Now we have the budget. And also let's like measure the ROI in terms of what that looks like. So there was definitely a shift compared to 2.5 years ago when we started the business where people are just trying to figure it out. And I do think people are still trying to figure it out because AI is ever evolving, but they're more ready to go live with it.
Yeah, I'm sure probably even a couple years ago, AI wasn't really a line item on a lot of
Oh,
people's.
for sure. For sure.
Now it's probably becoming more common for it to be included in people's budgets to implement and the governance over it and whatnot.
Yeah, and adding on to that, you mentioned budgets, which is such an interesting topic because I don't think this is discussed often enough on LinkedIn and whatnot, but pricing. So, how do you price out these solutions? At first, we're really going towards the methodology of we'll do consumption based pricing, where people use a set of tokens and then we charge them based on usage based pricing or consumption based pricing. So how much they use in terms of the tokens. And then now we've shifted much more towards a SaaS model in which it's me understand your business, what you're trying to achieve, what you want to go live with. Do you want to go live with persona intent, personalization, all of these things, in addition to what does your website traffic look like? And from that, we'll give them a price per month and it's set for the year. So they pay, it's billed annually, but this is how much it is per month. And that makes it so much easier, I would say, for the marketers to understand because being in the marketing space, I want to know exactly how much I'm going to be spending this quarter or this year. But when you shift over to AI, and you're purchasing an AI product, if it is consumption based, it's like, is that going to be $5,000 or is that going to be $50,000 in my budget? I'm just not sure just because I'm not, familiar with using this technology. So I think it's interesting how the dynamic changes as well with pricing and a topic that I believe should be discussed more on. But that's something that we've constantly discussed internally that we don't talk often about to folks outside our company, but it is a discussion that's worthy of a topic.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I haven't thought about it from that lens from, is it consumption based? Is it monthly? But that makes total sense. And it is still such a newer space in that
It
sense
is.
of, what does make the most sense and what is the usage people would use to kind of call that out. So yeah,
Right.
I'm glad.
Right. For sure. For sure.
I want to transition now to your growth because when a category is still forming, like this is, and go to market usually takes different shapes. So, how are you currently acquiring customers today, and which channels are proving to be the most reliable for building that pipeline for you guys?
Yeah, we're mainly going through partners. So it is very much of a partner first focus. And so there's two different sets of partners. There's the digital agencies and consulting partners. So those are any digital agency that works on websites, essentially. Ones like iMedia or SmartWork Solutions, Flywheel Digital. And so all of these partners who they have their own customer base. And then also the tech route or the tech partner, which is more of the DXP vendors or the digital experience platform vendors. So ones like Magnolia, that's a strategic partner for us, Kentaco, there's Optimizely and Sitecore. And both the digital agencies as well as the DXP vendors, they're servicing customers who they have a need for going live with the website, and so they already have a large customer base. So we're targeting our outreach to go after those digital agencies and DXP vendors and partnering with them so that they can include us in their messaging and their marketing and just working with them, going on sales calls with them. So that's how we're mainly going to market. We won't say no, obviously, to a direct customer. We love speaking directly to customers, but we're also definitely brought on to those calls when the partner's like, hey, can you talk to such and such client? They would like a demo, and then we're brought on to those calls. But um, I firmly believe, I think it's also just because it's my background. I've done a lot of partner marketing in the past and working with business development teams. But the power of partnerships is so key. There's the phrase, one plus one doesn't equal two, it equals X. I think it's so true because you can attain so much more, both as a solution implementation partner, but also as the technology partnership point of view. Because again, there's there's so much to that. Like whether you're going live with a new story to market with that partner or a new joint solution. And so that's been our main focus is working with those partners.
So, yeah, in practice, partner led growth works when both sides are getting clear value. So, when you're thinking about these agencies or partners or digital experience firms that you work with, what makes those relationships productive and what tends to separate a strong partner motion from one that stays more superficial?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So I would say in terms of a strong partner for us, I love hearing from the digital agencies when you first get on a call with them. What are they hearing from their customers? Are their customers looking for AI? Most of them are. I would say probably about 80% of them are. And then 20% are really not sure what to do with AI. Where do we get started? Actually, a lot of those are them, but they're not ready yet. So it may be the healthcare, life sciences, or financial services space where they really want to understand more of the platform before they just go live with AI search and digital assistants on their site. And so that's actually great for us because just two of my co-founders, they have 8 years in the conversational AI space in healthcare, so really familiar with those regulatory environments. But I would say a strong partner is when we've been hearing a lot from the partners themselves that they're ready to implement. They want training, they want onboarding, and they're ready to take us to all of their clients. But as you mentioned, Sarah, it has to be joint a value prop for both parties. So for us, we want to have partners that are really aware of what AI can do and are ready to try something new because this is a market that hasn't been explored before. That being said, I think partners, one more thing to add on to that, actually, I think partners are really strong for us when they are ready to go live with a product that they haven't seen past wins for in the past. Chatbots, for instance, that has been a failure, I would say. But now you bring in AI and it's game changing. You can go live with a chatbot on your website in less than a day by ingesting all of that content from that organization. And when you see that demo, I think the partner as well as the client is wowed by it. But they have to be ready to be like, okay, we're willing to try something that may have been broken in the past, but there is a solution now.
Yeah, that is definitely a hurdle to overcome for sure in those discussions if there's been a failure there. So, on the other side of things, kind of outside of partner-led growth, which I know is your guys' main focus, looking back, have there ever been some experiments you've run or different channels you've tried or growth investments that might have looked good on paper since obviously you went forward with but they didn't quite create that momentum you were looking for?
Sure. I've experimented a lot in the past couple years. I would say, especially having worked at WeWork, but other companies as well, like Google and Matterport, I had a much larger budget. But when you're bootstrapping a business, you're much more aware of the dollars that you spend. One thing that I tried that wasn't super successful, but I also, didn't give it enough time is paid ads. I didn't see the ROI of it, to be honest. And so I think we're also living in a time where we see ads all the time. We see them on LinkedIn. We did it specifically for LinkedIn, but we see them on LinkedIn. We see it in our social media. And I think sometimes we have this filter of, okay, here's another ad. Let me just scroll through it. So you get the impressions, but in terms of actually somebody converting, it's less so. What I have seen paid off is actually the outreach that you do to LinkedIn contacts, whether it's current contacts or you request a new contact at a company that you want to work with. And then from that, you engage with them. And then from that, you have a conversation, you give a demo. And for us, it's always the let me show and tell, because to me, I believe this in life, but seeing is believing. And once we show our products, people are like, oh my God, I've seen other solutions out there and yours is just way ahead. And so it's the difficulty, but also like, how do we get them to just have a meeting with us? And once we have a meeting, it's great. But the outreach on LinkedIn has been successful versus the ads. And then also events, in person events. I think also, we've been living in such a remote work situation. I work remotely, but I used to go in the office prior to 2020 and COVID and the pandemic. But when you actually see people and build up those relationships in person, I think that's super valuable because then it's beyond just a the product's pitch. It's who is this person, and I think that's really valuable. And I also think, just going back to your last question about what makes a partnership successful, I do believe it's the people. That goes a long way in terms of just building those relationships and liking to work with those companies. So yeah.
Absolutely. Relationships are
They're huge. But yeah, especially in, now that we're working remotely, when you actually see them live and, you can do it over Zoom and whatnot and Teams, but it's different to do the actual handshake.
well,
Yeah.
when you think about it, if we're partnering, whether it's a client or through partnerships, you're going to be talking to those people and you want to work with people that you
Daily basis.
know
Yeah.
that you can talk with and get along with. Yeah, there's definitely still so much value in those relationships, which it does take a little bit more effort and work to find in this such a remote world today. And
Mhm.
especially, I would say, in some of this tech environment and AI where really people are building things all over the place. So trying to connect with people still is so, so important for sure.
Right. And also to add on to that, get through the noise because as you just mentioned, there's so much talk about AI. Like, what's your differentiator? So, like, how do you establish that relationship first and
Yes.
then go into the platform product?
Yeah.
But then adding to that, working with a partner, you have to then bring the value to each unique customer, which is a little bit of a different story. So if I'm talking to a university, it's a different story from talking to a manufacturer, for instance. They all have their own, which is what I love about B2B is because when you're working with the business and then they have their customers, the story changes in terms of how your solution brings value to their customers. It's not a one size fits all approach for sure.
So, what was also interesting about your product from our previous conversation was its ability to generate insight. So, when customers use AI 1 to Z, they're not just deploying an assistant, they're also learning what users are actually asking for, which I think is very unique. How much of that feedback loop becomes part of the value proposition when you're talking to prospects?
It's huge. I had one customer who only wanted our platform specifically because of that. So when you go live with search or an old chatbot, you didn't have all the data and analytics. And now you can see with AI 1 to Z, what are people asking in terms of questions, which is super valuable because if the chat, for instance, comes back with an I don't know answer, it means you don't have the content to their question. So it gives content marketing authors the ability to create content, whether that's a blog post or whether that's a web page on your website to create content so that the chat can then answer their question or the search can answer their question. And that's also super valuable from the GEO and AEO perspective because people are asking questions to Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT. And we don't always know the questions or the brand, that specific brand doesn't know the questions that are being asked to these models. So it gives you insight once you're able to see all the questions that they're asking to your brands, then to create that content in which you can optimize that content to get found. But the insights are really interesting because the more you're able to understand what people are asking about your brand or solution or product, the more you can develop the right content as well as help them get to that next step. So that leads to a conversion for your company.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much gold nuggets in there that
Yeah.
each clients can pull out.
There's also a few, there's a few more that differentiates us from other just chat solutions. So putting in images, being able to add forms. People are now talking a lot about vibe coding. So with vibe coding is how can a marketer or non-technical user be able to essentially code by just using natural language? And that's really cool because the other day I vibe coded a form. So instead of asking a technical team, can you create this form for me within this digital assistant? I literally gave instructions to the platform, create a form for me, copy and paste. This is what I have for a PDF. And then I uploaded it in the system and it created an entire form for me. So now you can vibe code different things within the platform. You can change what we call panels. So instead of landing on a chatbot and it just says, ask me anything, there's a panel with call to action buttons that lead to the most sought after content. So if you're a university site, for instance, you can have buttons on the chatbot right away that goes to admissions or alumni events or schedule campus tour. And I think it's all about how do you present the most sought after things within that chatbot experience, but you can vibe code all of that look and feel now. So that's also what's coming about with AI is just the vibe coding, um, a sphere of things, and have as we have call to action buttons. So it goes way beyond just a chatbot.
It's amazing. So, zooming out for a moment, building in AI right now comes with a lot of noise, like we've already mentioned. There's can definitely be excitement, and then there can be skepticism, confusion, and a crowded market. So, curious where that creates the most friction for your team when it comes to your actual growth and market awareness.
Yeah. I would say in terms of how we're being compared, some people will say, oh, we're trying Salesforce Agent Force or we're trying Microsoft Copilot. And with all of those, it's much more of a heavy lift. And so how do we differentiate from those two players or just other players out there? Some people like want to try to build it themselves. And to that, I would say what we bring to the market is much more of an ease of use platform that you can just go live with literally in less than a day. But then if you want to build in back end integrations that where you connect it to third party systems, you can do so. But I think it starts a lot with education. Sometimes YouTube videos help, to be honest. But educating the folks in that sphere.
There's also a resource reality that comes with bootstrapping. And I know you touched on that a little bit with the paid ads, but without the kind of spend of larger companies like you're used to from where you came from, where they
Yeah.
can deploy, all kinds of motions to get awareness. How do you guys decide where to place bets and where to kind of stay disciplined?
Yeah, it's a lot of learn as you go, first of all, in terms of what is working for us, especially in this new market space. Growing up in the or being in the web content management space for so long, there's sort of a playbook in a way. I mean, there's a playbook for a lot of companies out there that have existed in a certain market. With this, it's so new. And for us, we've tried things. We've tried sponsoring events. We've tried being a part of certain communities. There's one community, the CMS experts group. So very like targeted niche focus within CMS or content management systems. We've found that that is definitely our audience. So the first year was a lot of experimenting in terms of what works for marketing and what doesn't, but also, it is wearing a lot of hats. It is not very different from my past companies. It is not, hey, this is your job, mainly solely focusing on partner marketing, but that encompasses a lot. I could do a whole other podcast on partner marketing because you touch so many different things. And that being said, with with this, I would say we learned a lot the first year of what's working and what's not in terms of marketing, and now placing our bets in terms of what is working for us marketing wise, which has been interacting on LinkedIn, leading to demos and calls, and then building out those relationships with those agencies. Also figuring out what's kind of agency, like is it an specific digital agency or is it more of a consulting firm? So a lot of experimenting from the beginning, and then, as mentioned, just wearing all hats in terms of the whole business. Like it's not one of those companies at any startup. You can't just be like, oh, this is what I do. One day you're doing this, or 1 hour you're doing this, and then all of a sudden you switch and you're focusing on something else. Or a customer support ticket comes in, and you need to answer that, or there is a partner call or a customer call. So you're constantly switching tasks, which I find really fun. I like to, go from one project to the next, but also honing in terms of like what is actually working and how do we put more effort and time around that? What is resonating in the market? So with us more focusing on GEO and AEO in the future, we've been hearing about that in events or at events for the past year. And now we have a solution. So we're going to focus on that marketing messaging in the next month. But it has been, to answer your question, it has been a lot of experimentation the first year. Because again, My background is much more of, uh, yeah, you have big budgets to spend on X, Y, and Z and work with digital agencies to do this project. And now it is a lot is in house, but it's been fun. It's been fun. You have to have a passion for it, for sure. I think in any startup, you have to be passionate about what you do, and if you don't get up every day, or you're not, for me, I'm a runner, so if I'm not on that run, like thinking about, oh, okay, this is the project that I'm going to go live with, or I need to do X, Y, and Z on this item, then to me, you're on the wrong job. So I think having that passion, and waking up every day being like, "Oh my gosh, we have a product that is just huge and has the ability to be a rocket ship," I think is amazing and amazing to be a part of.
You
Yeah.
definitely need that passion in a startup or any early stage company,
Any early stage, for sure.
that roller coaster. So looking over, the next 6-12 months, what are your guys' biggest growth priorities for your company, or where is your team most focused? I know obviously on the product side, you've mentioned, this new release, but what else can you share with us?
Yeah. I have a list that's on my sticky right here. So it's funny that you bring that up. It's more of a marketing thing. Yeah, really focused on GEO and AEO because we're going to announce that in the next 2 months. That being said, we were talking internally where you got to eat your own dog food. So it's like, okay, if we're going live with this solution, we actually got to implement it for our website so that we can get found in these platforms. So we need to spend some time doing the work that we're about to pitch. So there's that. Vertical campaigns, I think that's really exciting. The messaging hits differently when it's not just here we have an AI search and digital assistant platform, go live with it on your website. That's very general. So, how do we target into the specific verticals like EDU or manufacturing or retail? How do we create demos for um, those companies? Also, case studies. I think case studies really resonate when you can tell a story that this customer went live with our solution, and here were the business outcomes that they got out of it. We do have customers, we just need to be able to share their names. So I need to get permission in terms of using their names, potentially trying more of the press, PR, analyst relations route. I have a big analyst relations background. So exploring whether we touch on the Gartners or Forresters yet, or it might be too early for that, but starting to reach out to press. So the list kind of goes on, but that's top of mind. But I think sharing more stories in the future and making it relatable, which goes along with the vertical campaigns. So how do we make it relatable? But again, where it's not just an email to these companies and it goes in their inbox and they delete. It's like, okay, how do we get them to have that call with us so that once we have the call, it's usually a win for us.
And as you think about all of these kind of bets that you have going forward here, what feels like the biggest blocker that could slow some of this progress?
Ooh, I think the blocker would just be our own selves, to be honest. I think putting your head down and doing the work, I've always respected that. People, when I worked with them in past organizations, the hard workers, and we all have hard workers at our company. So I think it's more of, okay, we're all aligned as a team, which is great about being in a startup is there's really no politics. And so how do you just put your head down and do outline the plan? Thankfully, I'm not in past organizations. I was building out decks and decks of here's our go to market plan. And it's much more of move fast and break stuff, as the saying goes. And you learn as you go. So that's my biggest advice is just moving fast, especially when there's a lot of talk in the market, as we mentioned. But how do you get your solution and brand name recognized and known? And just move forward and implementing the work. So I think we would be our own blockers if I were to guess. But otherwise, I think it's go time. Yeah.
And for anyone who wants to keep up with you and learn more, where's the best place to connect or follow along?
LinkedIn would be the best place. Yeah. So there's AI1 to Z, our LinkedIn, but also more from our founders. I'm just Nicole Rogers at AI1 to Z on LinkedIn. And then you can email me, Nicole at AI1 to Z.com. But yeah, I would say probably LinkedIn is the best. And our website, obviously, AI1 to Z.com. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Mo's Market Pulse. And thank you again, Nicole, for joining us today.
Thanks, Sarah, for having me. Appreciate it.